Learning to fly in the IFR environment is one of those things that is simple, but not easy. I say it's simple because once you reach the point in your training where you're learning to fly IFR, you already have the basic aircraft control and cockpit familiarization to literally execute any individual task that's asked of you. So I'm talking tasks like turn left, turn right, climb, descend, maintain this airspeed, fly this course. That's very simple. You can do that. Now, the reason why I say it's not easy is because for the first time, you now have to constantly determine what task is most important at this specific moment in time. One moment, it might be more important to fly the aircraft than to talk. But in the very next moment, it might be absolutely critical that you finally get that radio call out. In the flying world, we call this ability task management. And it's literally the most important thing for you to understand before you're ready to progress beyond instrument flying. So in this video, I'm going to share the 4 most necessary task management tips for new students to know. Alright, so the first thing we're going to discuss is requesting initial vectors to a waypoint. This is without a doubt the most OP technique that I'm going to discuss in the entire video. If there's one thing I wish I could have gone back and told myself in pilot training, it would have been to request initial vectors. For even greater SA, you can request initial vectors and distance to the waypoint. So let's set up this hypothetical situation. You've just departed Woodring on a heading of 090 at 3000, and your approach controller says Dragon 18, climb maintain 5000, clear direct pods. As soon as you say Dragon 18, clear direct pods, you're implicitly stating the following to be true. 1. I know the exact heading for my current position to pods, and I'm turning to that heading immediately. Number 2. I know exactly how far I am away from pods. And number 3. When I get to pods, I will enter a standing holding pattern unless you tell me otherwise. So if you hit pods and you don't enter holding, you're liable to be violated. If you overshoot the direct heading to pods, you're liable to be violated. If you do either of those things and you create a conflict with other traffic, you will automatically be violated. So if your avionics are not ready to proceed direct pods, just request an initial vector to pods. Now, legally the only thing you're responsible for at this point is flying the heading that was assigned to you by ATC. Sometimes when you request an initial vector, the approach controller will ask you to advise them when ready to proceed direct to the waypoint. The only catch in this situation is that once you have your GPS navigating directly to the waypoint, that you don't turn to the GPS waypoint until you advise them that you're ready and they direct you to proceed direct to that waypoint. My next tip is that there are actually 4 types of radar vectors, but most students really only use one. So the 4 types are short vectors, vectors, extended vectors, and penalty vectors. Short vectors are typically used in time critical situations. So that's like if you're in an emergency or if you have low fuel. Understand that when you request short vectors, they're going to put you somewhere between 1 and 3 miles away from the FAF, and you're basically asking to be slam dunked. Vectors, or radar vectors, are the standard vectors that an approach controller furnishes you with on a typical instrument approach. You can expect to be vectored about 3 miles out from the FAF, and you'll have an intercept angle of no greater than 30 degrees to the FAF unless you request or state otherwise. Next, we have extended vectors. So extended vectors are used when you're behind the aircraft. So when you need to let the controller know what approach you want, you can drop that little extended vectors as part of your approach request to give them the hint that you aren't prepared to fly the approach just yet. The last type of vector is what I would call penalty vectors. You use this tool when you're entirely unprepared for anything whatsoever. You can request explicitly penalty vectors or just request a vector to the north, south, east, or west of the field and advise that you'll let them know when you're ready to proceed back inbound. If they are not crazy busy, they'll put you on some vectors. Otherwise, they'll tell you to go hold at a fix typically associated with an approach to that airfield. The next tip is that when you check in with the new approach controller and you don't have the current ATIS, check in and say standby weather. So the controllers are legally required to ensure that you have the current weather information at your destination before allowing you to shoot an approach into that airfield. When you pull up to the terminal airspace, they're expecting you to have already picked up the weather well in advance. If you check in and say negative weather or negative ATIS, this can be perceived as rude or irresponsible because, well, why not? However, standby weather conveys the fact that you don't have the ATIS and the intention that you'll pick it up before executing the approach. My next tip is comically obvious, and that is to just slow down. Literally, slow the plane down. I think pilot training does the students a disservice in the sense that because everything is so canned, students have a hard time realizing when it's okay to operate outside of the constructs that we've provided for them. One of those constructs are the airspeeds that we fly in the radar pattern. What this construct ensures is that if you fly these airspeeds in the radar pattern, nobody's going to complain to you about the airspeeds that you're flying. The next level in your aviation career is understanding that every situation requires context. As long as the airspace is not ridiculously busy, you can fly whatever airspeed you want in the radar pattern. This is not an exact science, and there's no objective way to measure how congested the airspace is while you're actually flying in that airspace. So just remember that your role as a pilot is to safely execute IFR procedures and instructions. And if you need to slow down to help make that happen, then just do it. If the approach controllers need you to speed up or they need to vector you somewhere, they'll do their job, which is controlling the flow of traffic. So if you're flying with myself or a like-minded instructor, as long as you can justify why the decisions that you're making in the plane are not unsafe or illegal, I'm down. Go ahead. And if I need you to speed up or do something else that's more efficient for everybody's training as a whole, I'll just say that. But at least give yourself a chance and try to slow down to get yourself prepared if you're that far behind the aircraft. So those are the 4 big tips that I wanted to share with you for today. Some honorable mentions include requesting phonetic spelling. So if you get told to go to a waypoint, you have no idea where that waypoint is or what it even is. If you request a phonetic spelling, the approach controller will spell it out to you using the NATO phonetic alphabet. My other honorable mention is that you can literally do whatever you want in the plane as long as you ask for it. The only limit to what the approach controller can clear you is your creativity and your ability to explain what you're going to do. If you're departing and you want vectors over downtown before you start your climb, just say that and they'll make it happen. If you want to do a rejoin with one of your homies in the pattern before departing, just say that and they'll make it happen. With respect to approach controllers and what you can request with them, you're only limited by your creativity. Otherwise, that's all I got for this video. Again, continue to like and subscribe, share the video if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment if you have any suggestions on future videos. Until next time, I will see you later.